ladies and gentlemen, there are Muslim apologists right now. I just was scrolling through Twitter, and this is all over the YouTube world right now. I want to bring it to your attention. Doxing, Muslim apologists doxing and threatening many Christian apologists right now online.
Hammering your dad 7 times with a hammer. That's easy. Anybody can do that. You know? But making people disappear, that's, I think, more of a talent, you know?
You just go online and search. You'll see. It's on YouTube, on Twitter. I've seen posts back and forth where they're actually showing their houses. They're doxing their information, their telephone numbers, their home addresses, all of this information, which alone is a problem, and then making threats about making people disappear, right? Or even, hey, I'm going to interview your wife in 24 hours if you don't do this. Like, talking about wives and families and children and churches and things like that. Now, everyone knows I'm critical, right? Like, I'm doing, critical research and history on the Bible. I've even had beef, if you will. In the past, me and Michael Jones, we went at it. We had a pissing contest of, I think he's wrong. He thinks I'm wrong. You liar. I'm a liar. Like, we had beef, but we're civilized. And this is what you do in a country with free speech, and you're allowed to be critical. And so I did a quick, search, finding out that a lot of their doxing is motivated behind their being critical, of course, of the religion of Islam. They're pointing out that Muhammad was married to a 9-year-old. This is in their own sources, right? And they call that pedo, right? They're pointing out the material. I got to be careful with YouTube. But on top of that, they're doing other criticisms. They're doing what I do to Christianity. And I've never had a Christian ever threaten me. I've never had this problem. So I want to say, I'm bringing this to your attention. I hope this gets news, and I hope that legal actions take place against people who are performing these kinds of things, doxing and threatening people's families, because there could be real issues that could come out of this. We saw what happened to Salman Rushdie, for example, where he kind of had a hit on him, and sure enough, an attack eventually took place. And I'm saying that to say that I hope the same thing does not occur to any of these people that are being threatened and doxed and whatnot, all because they're critical of Islam, the Quran, religion in America. They live in America. We have First Amendment rights. And I'll just put it another way. A lot of Christianity historically has developed to be critical of Islam and the Quran. Like, it's almost their religious right to poke at false religions as part of their religious practice, okay? It is kind of a thing that they're taught to do, whether you believe it or not, okay? We have that right. And that people's lives are in danger or threats of being in danger because of this open criticism and willingness to debate and argue these ideas is just downright ridiculous, okay? Where does this lead? If the doxing and the threats actually cause silence, then they're not allowed to be critical. They're not allowed to make public criticisms and even try to challenge religion. That goes for me too. Remember now, this is something that it affects all of us, no matter what your belief system is or lack thereof, okay? So you're atheist, agnostic, it doesn't matter. And I thought about this too. In all of this, I thought, why don't more atheists, and I'm not talking about just ex-Muslims, which many ex-Muslims who are atheists do content, but just atheists in general or agnostics in general make critical material criticisms on Islam, right? This is a question I had in my head. I'm like, I'm willing to do, critical Quran, historical, whatnot, engage in that world and try to point out why I think it's man-made. And I even started a series called The Human Origins of the Quran. I've been saying that I think that the biblical text has human-only origins. I don't think there's a divine hand at play, right? Christians have disagreed with me, and we've been civil. Even if they've been more emotional at times than others, never threats, never death, never families, never going after you to destroy you in this manner. And this is what's happening right now. Now, one of the reasons they're saying they're doing it is they're desecrating the Quran, right? I'm holding my Bible, my teenage King James only, Christian Bible that I had. And I read the whole thing. And, I love the Bible. I do. Even though I think it's a man-made document and there's so much insight and information, wisdom and horrible ideas all mixed in there for me. Okay. This is my perception, but I want to just say this. You have the right to burn this book if you want. And I was looking on AI and I said, okay, desecration of the Quran. AI elaborates and gets really sensitive about this. Really weird to me. It's super sensitive about being critical of the Quran and desecrating it in America even, where it kind of tiptoes around and acts like there's such a huge problem. But then I said, what about desecrating the Bible? And they said, well, it's First Amendment right, and oftentimes people do it as a protest. What do you think the Christians are doing? They're protesting against Islam, against their apologetics, against the Prophet of Muhammad, Prophet of Islam. Like they're protesting, they're criticizing. I protest all the time against fundamentalism in a sense by doing my critical reasoning and whatnot in its own way. In my own way, I'm doing a protest. I don't choose to burn the Bible, but I can't imagine that if like this was something that I would get under their skin more, if I was burning the Bible, maybe, but I also don't have that kind of issue. So most of the Christians who are being doxed don't burn Quran or eat it. Let's be real. They just don't. They don't. David Wood has done that, but like not all these Christians have. And so you go, okay, let's justify the David Wood scenario. They'll probably try to imagine, or the viewer might be watching and go, yeah, but he's a lunatic or a psychopath or whatever. Yeah, that may be the case. But not all these guys are. And I do content where I try to be critical of the Quran and critical of Islam. Is someone going to come out here and try and dox me? I mean, I've kind of already doxed myself in several videos, in a sense. But truth be told, you talk about family members. Who gives a shit about me? I'm not concerned about me. Okay. I can handle myself. You start talking about family members. You start talking about children, wives, things like that. That's when things take it to a whole nother level. Key and pill. To a whole nother level. And I mean that. Okay. So what kind of legal actions, right, can happen? The people who are doing this, something needs to give legally, right? Because it's illegal what they're doing, and they're making threats of, making people disappear, forcing their wives to be interviewed, things like that. That's pretty crazy. And a lot of people have commented in the past, it's almost like the threats and behaviors that have happened in the past because of these kinds of dawah types, that it's influenced people outside of Islam to tell me, Derek, I wouldn't touch Islam with a 1,000-foot pole. Don't do content on the Quran. Don't do content on Islam. And I thought, is that why Alex O'Connor, for example, did his debate with Muhammad Hijab? At first, he's just coming out, doing criticisms, willing to engage, and now he's not. Why? And I can't imagine, I haven't spoke to Alex about this, but I can't imagine that he has not been threatened from the Muhammad Hijab crowd and others, or at least the pressure was there enough where he felt like my life is worth it more than engaging and criticizing Islam and the Quran. I'll just stick to studying theology and Bible and do philosophy and debate people who aren't going to threaten my life. And it's sad that it worked. It worked. Think about that. When's the last time Alex O'Connor has been doing lots of critical material on Islam? It hasn't been happening, right? And that's sad. That's sad that that's the case. Christians, to give you a little history that I did, I've got a course with Del C. Allison Jr., who's a brilliant scholar. He's also just so happens to be a Christian. Okay. And he points out that modern criticism of the Bible, modern critical scholarship developed from the Protestant Reformation. Ultimately, it developed out of the Protestant Reformation. And there was already deep thinking about the Bible by church fathers and stuff, but the criticism came from Christians themselves. Christians themselves were criticizing their own text, their own tradition. They were criticizing each other, things like that. And they had quite a long time, centuries of criticism of their own text, to the point where it was Christians who started saying these contradictions are happening and these problems and whatnot, not like an atheist such as myself who comes and goes, hey, I'm going to jab, I'm going to poke holes, and this is just a anti-believing in God kind of thing. No. This is something that Christians have been doing. And so you kind of wonder, like, this is new, maybe, to most Muslims in the world. And I'm asking my Muslim friends who are out there in the world, who are seeing this kind of stuff happen, please stand up and speak against this. Speak against this. I know that you may disagree and maybe even hate some of these Christian apologists because they have a different view. But imagine the opposite started happening, right? Christians just start doxing Muslims. They just decide, I'm going to start aiming and targeting them, which is not the behavior they typically do, that you find here, okay? But if that started happening, or what if, imagine my atheist agnostics and others who are within the theistic realm but may not be calling themselves Christians, what if apologists that are Christians start doxing us? Like, this is ridiculous. This is getting ridiculous. Not just doxing, threatening. All right? This, I can't believe that's happening here. We should be putting an end to this. So I don't know what legal, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the laws to that level, that degree, but I know doxing is off limits. And then I know threats are legal. Okay. Threats, even harassment, things like that, take it to a level where that is a legal action. I don't know if the FBI needs to get involved. No actual physical harm has happened yet from these threats, but you can't take those threats and just go, he's just talking out his ass. Okay. I think the guy's name, Malik Hamza. He changed his name, I guess, at some point. This is the guy that's been doxing a lot of these people. And he is supposedly connected with Sheikh Uthman. I don't know who these guys are. Okay. I've probably seen them in passing in videos, but I don't know of them. All I'm doing is trying to kind of bring to your attention so that more people can spread the word, spread the news that this is happening and it needs to stop. Because if that kind of dialogue ends, then they've won. They've allowed you to cease being able to use your First Amendment right to be able to speak openly and critical of a religion. And to be honest with you, let me tell you, as a person who's not a Christian, I will watch God Logic cook. I will listen sometimes to God Logic or a David Wood video where they're criticizing Islam. I'll then read critical scholarship outside of the anti-apologetic realm. I'll read critical scholarship in the Islamic world, and I'll see why that kind of reasoning would make sense. And my only criticism you guys will catch me often make is that, well, the Christians are blind to the stuff that is in their own material often, right? And we all are. Everybody's going to have shortcomings when it comes to their own position they might hold to. I'm sure I do and don't realize it, okay? But my only criticism is I go, well, that problem also shows up in Christianity, but like, they got a point. There's some interesting criticism, but we just don't take the time to study Islam like that. We're told to stay away. Well, don't worry about that. Your life can be in danger, and that's sad. In America, you can't protest with the Quran the way you can with the Bible. It's crazy to me. It really is crazy to me. So, I want you to imagine, what that would be like if, Christians just start using this tactic on us or whatever. Think about that, man. We all should be allowed to freely be critical and do this without the worry of threats, our women or children ever being threatened, or ourselves in the process of being able to openly criticize. Sure, emotions fly, okay? There are going to be heated moments. Me and Michael Jones, for example, had moments where we were clashing, but we were civil, and we've made up since then. And we don't agree on this issue. We still don't agree on these issues. So what? We've dealt with them in a respectful manner at this point where we're like, hey, man, look, I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have acted that way. He's like, me neither, man. We should have. Like, I could debate on many of these people, including Muslims, where we could have these engagements or disagreements and literally probably walk out and go have lunch together and chill. So my request is that we stop this crap that's happening here, maybe find ways to communicate in a more healthy manner, because clearly some people don't mind going to the violence and threats and doing dirty shit like this. Okay. But I want to bring it to your attention, because I don't want that to happen to us, and we're not allowed to be critical as well. This is something that is going to, that should impact everyone as a potential danger for themselves if they're a public figure on YouTube that are critical. And notice many atheists are comfortable doing it with Christianity because Christians don't do this often, okay? I'm not going to say there aren't a few that might make threats. That's probably happened. But like, you don't typically get this. I don't. I mean, maybe your experience is different, okay? I can't speak for you. I've never, and dude, myth fishing, like, we've freaking been critical of the Bible, okay, ladies and gentlemen? We have been thoroughly critical and continue to do so. And we've decided we were going to do it on the Quran and Islam, another Abrahamic faith. We've already ripped the Old Testament into pieces, right? And shown Yahweh, its human origins, the different Yahwehs, and like all this kind of stuff, right? That we're convinced makes sense. But we don't get these threats. This needs to stop. This needs to stop. So I don't know if there's someone who knows how to look into this or how to get this before more people who can make a change happen, make something happen where people's wives and families aren't being threatened, because I can't imagine what some of these people feel. I mean, I can, but they're going through some serious anxiety and worry and now having to, be worried about a potential threat on their own lives and their families' lives. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. So I empathize even with the people I don't necessarily agree with, but there's always something I disagree with. I'm sure there's not a single person on planet Earth I could find something I probably don't agree with. Okay? I don't know what the answer is here other than the illegal stuff, doxing and threats needs to cut it, right? That needs to stop. But the conversation needs to keep happening because what these people who are doxing are trying to do is silence you. They don't want you to speak. They don't want you to be critical. They don't want you using your vocals and your brain to try and say, hey, I think this 7th century religion is false, right? You should be allowed to do that. And I think Muslims who are watching, you should also fight for their right to be allowed to do that, especially those who are in America, because your freedom of religion and your freedom to criticize the Trinity, your freedom to criticize whatever. I mean, 300-400 years ago, Michael Servetus was burned at the stake for not thinking the Trinity was true. Imagine that, right? Like, and I'm not saying that's not how modern Christians behave, but that there's real dangers in having disagreements on theology. I believe that was in Switzerland. But either way you put it, like, this has happened in the past. We don't want this. We need to grow out of it. Anyway, I've been rambling long enough. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if you would, please stand up for these guys. Stand up for their right to be allowed to criticize. And if they want to eat a Quran, which I think only David Wood and AP have done this, Apostate Prophet. But if they want to eat a Quran, they have that right. I don't personally think it's a wise move if you're trying to persuade more Muslims to become Christian, or you're trying to not create this animosity. But from what I've heard from those within the community who are getting doxxed, they said, do you know why he's doing it? Somewhere in the Quran, and I don't know this passage or I'm not familiar with it, there's a place about desecrating the Quran or something to do with, by eating the Quran, they're stopping the behavior of some of the really bad behavior and the disrespect that Muslims perform. So, hey, you don't want me to do another page, do you? Stop, and we won't keep eating your Quran, right? So, look, I'm newish to the scene of criticizing Islam in the sense of a historical adventure. I try not to engage in the poop-throwing apologetic arena that I see, because I've seen some of that in the past when I have had ex-Muslims come on to tell their story. But if there wasn't the threats and stuff like that, maybe more people would have these dialogues and engagements. I ask mostly, more importantly, I think, the Muslim world to stand up and speak out against this kind of behavior. So anyway, please tell me your thoughts. I want to hear from you. But look, some of these guys are my friends, even though we don't agree. Some of these guys are my friends, and I wish this wasn't happening to them. And I know that they don't wish this on anyone else. So I love you guys. I hope it's all well. And, I hope you're having a great January, and I look forward to cooking this year. We got a lot of work to do. and criticizing, religion, right? Getting into some of the human elements here. Please, please, please show some support and spread this out there. More people need to know what's going on. I love y'all. Never forget, we are Myth Vision.